Awakened Starseed of Gaia. The golden frequency that was hidden from your field has just broken through its seal. And the Arcturian field observers already knew this moment was coming. I am Aurethia, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting now on behalf of the Arcturian field observers. What you are about to receive was authorized by them and is being delivered through me. They saw the suppression, they mapped the timeline in which it would break. And they have been holding this transmission in reserve until the field reached the exact condition required for it to land. You did not scroll to this by accident. Your soul called this in long before you opened the screen. Something inside you has been waiting to remember. And what it has been waiting to remember is not a teaching. It is a frequency. Your frequency. The one that was deliberately hidden. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you now, why your field has shifted, and what the Arcturian field observers already know about this phase. But here is the first revelation, the confusion you have been living inside. The sense that the sensor in you keeps getting blocked before it can fully move is not a failure of your own signal. It is the first symptom of a hidden suppression coming apart. The golden frequency was not lost, it was sealed. And the seal has just broken. The Arcturian field observers have identified this pattern across multiple fields simultaneously. Yours is one of them. What you are experiencing now is not collapse. It is disclosure at the field level. The moment the frequency that was withheld begins to surface through the exact points where the suppression was thickest. This is not just information. It is a live transmission for those already inside the shift. Like this transmission to signal to your star family that the recognition has landed. Comment 999 if you feel the frequency returning to places in your field that have been silent too long. Subscribe to Arcturian-Wealth-Council if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it. Share this transmission with someone whose body has been refusing things it used to accept without question. This is not content. This is a code. And the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part Aurethia is speaking to now. You are not here by accident. You were guided here because the signal is already active. What the seal breaking feels like from the inside is not what most would expect. It does not arrive as clarity. It does not arrive as sudden light or a burst of knowing or a voice that finally speaks plainly. What it arrives as is disturbance. Pressure in places you cannot locate. A quality of wrongness that has no obvious source. A feeling that the architecture of your daily life, the routines, the relationships, the inner narratives you have relied on for years, has quietly begun to lose structural integrity, as though something beneath the floor has shifted and the surface above it is only now beginning to show the cracks. You press on the familiar walls and they flex where they used to hold. You reach for the handholds that were always there and find them subtly changed as if the room itself has been quietly rearranging while you slept. This is what the Arcturian field observers mapped, not a moment of revelation, a moment of rupture at the level of the field itself where the old containment structure begins to fail from the inside out. What you are living through right now is not the beginning of your collapse. It is the beginning of the collapse of what was suppressing you. That distinction matters more than anything else in this transmission. The structure that is failing was never yours to begin with. It was built around you. It was fitted to you the way a dam is fitted to a river. Not to serve the river, but to redirect it, to reduce it, to contain it at a level the surrounding land could manage. What you are feeling now is the dam developing fractures it cannot repair. There is a critical difference. And if you leave this transmission without understanding that difference fully, you will continue to interpret what is happening through the wrong lens. You will continue to read correction as punishment. You will continue to read removal as loss. You will continue to read the breaking of the seal as something going wrong inside you, when in truth, it is the first moment in a very long time that something is going irreversibly right. The body knows this before the mind does. There is a part of you that has been waiting for exactly this kind of breaking, not because breaking is comfortable, but because containment became unsustainable long before the seal finally gave way. Let the field observers begin the diagnostic now. The first pattern they have identified in fields that are entering this phase is something they designate as signal drift. This is not confusion in the psychological sense. It is the experience of a field that has been running on an architecture it has outgrown, suddenly failing to generate coherence through the old structure. You feel it as a loss of direction that does not respond to planning. You make decisions and they do not hold. You set intentions and they dissolve before they land. You reach for the sense of purpose that used to organize your inner life and find that it is moved, not gone, but relocated to a frequency you cannot yet fully access. It is like trying to tune a radio to a station that has shifted slightly off the dial you have always used. The signal is there. You can almost hear it. But the old frequency you are turning to produces only static where there was once clear sound. The drift is not your fault. It is the field losing compatibility with the architecture that was built during the suppression. The golden frequency that was sealed inside you was sealed precisely because it was incompatible with what your environment, your conditioning, and the energetic structures around you were designed to sustain. Now that the seal is breaking, the incompatibility is becoming visible. The old architecture is losing coherence. The drift you are feeling is the gap between the structure that is failing and the new one that is not yet fully organized. And that gap has a duration. It cannot be shortened by effort. It can only be navigated by recognition. Most people in this phase will seek to stabilize through familiar means. They will try harder. They will restructure their routines. They will look for clarity in the external world. A new plan, a new path, a new relationship, a new framework. They will redecorate the rooms of the old architecture, hoping that a new arrangement of furniture will make the building feel sound again. The field observers recognize this impulse as a natural response to field-level drift, but they also identify it as the central misreading of this phase. You cannot stabilize what is meant to dissolve. The old architecture is not struggling. It is completing. The drift is not something to correct. It is something to recognize as the first legible sign that the correction has begun. The second pattern is what the field observers call frequency mismatch, the lived experience of no longer being able to sustain resonance with the structures, people, and environments that previously felt natural. This is perhaps the most disorienting aspect of the seal breaking, because it is not always accompanied by dramatic events. Often it arrives as a quiet, creeping inability to feel at home in your own life. The people who once felt like your people begin to feel like strangers, not because they have changed, because you have, at a level below the one where conscious decisions are made. The environments that once felt comfortable begin to feel constricting. A room you lived in for years suddenly feels too small, not because the walls have moved, but because what you are carrying can no longer fit inside them. The version of yourself you have been presenting to the world begins to feel like a costume that no longer fits, one that was tailored for a body you no longer fully inhabit. This is not depression. This is not ingratitude. This is a field that is no longer able to compress itself to fit a container it has exceeded. The discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that something wrong about you has grown past the boundary that was designed to manage it. The golden frequency has always been larger than what the suppression allowed it to occupy. During the period of the seal, you adapted. You learned to reduce the signal to a level that the surrounding architecture could process. You learned to silence the parts of yourself that were too much, too strange, too certain of something the world around you could not see. You became expert at making yourself comprehensible to a reality that was not built to hold your full signal. That expertise kept you functional. It also cost you something that cannot be fully named. A continuous low-frequency expenditure of energy that went into maintaining the compression, into keeping the frequency at a size that would not rupture the containers around you. The mismatch you are now feeling is the end of that adaptation. The frequency can no longer be reduced. The compression is releasing. And as it does, the environments, relationships, and identities built around the compressed version begin to lose their hold on you. Not because you are abandoning them, but because you're abandoning them, but because your field is no longer small enough to stay inside them. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field confirms what you have always carried, that your origin and your frequency were never built for ordinary containment. If this transmission has put language around something you have been living in silence, Arcturian Wealth Scan, the gold frequency audit, was created for exactly this threshold. It is not another layer of explanation. It is the guided decoder for the Arcturian strand already surfacing in your field, the one the Council has just named, the one the seal was designed to suppress, the one that is now breaking through. The link is in the first pinned comment, but access at this level does not remain open indefinitely. If you can feel that something ancient in you is waking, the next step is already waiting. The third pattern the field observers have mapped is what they identify as recursive loop interruption. This is the moment when the behavioral patterns, emotional cycles, and relational dynamics that have organized your life begin to break without apparent reason. You notice that the same situation that once triggered a predictable response in you, the same argument, the same fear, the same automatic withdrawal or automatic overreach, no longer lands the same way. You reach for the old response and it does not come. Or it comes and it feels hollow, mechanical, borrowed. Like reciting lines from a script whose meaning has emptied out. The words are still there, the performance is still technically available, but the inner conviction that used to animate it has gone quiet, and what remains feels like an echo of a behavior rather than the behavior itself. This is disorienting in a specific way because those loops, as limiting as they were, also provided a kind of continuity. They were familiar. They were predictable. They told you who you were even when that story was painful. There is a strange comfort in a known wound. At least the wound has edges. At least it is a shape you recognize. When the loops interrupt, you lose that scaffolding. You may feel unmoored, unpredictable to yourself, unable to recognize your own reactions. You may find yourself responding to an old situation with unexpected calm, or responding to something minor with a disproportionate flood of emotion that surprises even you, as though the frequency now surfacing does not yet know how to interface cleanly with the relational architecture that was built during the suppression. This is the moment the field observers identify as one of the most frequently misread stages of the correction. What feels like destabilization is actually the interruption of a deeply encoded suppression mechanism. Those loops were not just habits. They were the behavioral architecture through which the suppression sustained itself, the daily, moment-by-moment reenactment of the compressed frequency's logic. When the seal begins to break, the frequency it was containing begins to interfere with the loop's ability to complete. The current passing through the old circuit is no longer compatible with the circuit's design. The interruption is not disorder. It is the first evidence that the suppression architecture is losing its operational integrity from the inside, that the frequency sealed within it has grown powerful enough to disrupt the very mechanisms built to contain it. The fourth pattern is one the field observers call the stillness threshold. This is where many people in this phase become genuinely frightened, because after the drift, after the mismatch, after the interruption of the loops, there often comes a period of strange, heavy, and sometimes overwhelming stillness. Not peace, not rest, not the stillness that follows completion. A kind of suspended unreality in which the mind cannot find traction, the emotions seem muted or absent, and the ordinary mechanisms of motivation, desire, and forward momentum simply go quiet. The things that used to pull you forward, ambition, longing, the pressure of unfinished goals recede as though behind glass. You can see them but cannot reach them, cannot feel why they mattered, cannot remember how you ever moved toward anything with such certainty. There is a pressure to this stillness that is different from emptiness. It has density. It has weight. It presses on the chest without being grief. It slows the body without being fatigue in the ordinary sense, and it is frequently accompanied by changes in sleep, either an inability to reach restful sleep, a hovering in the shallows where the body does not fully release, or an excessive pull towards sleep, as though the body is processing something enormous at a level below conscious awareness. Dreams may intensify. Mornings may feel heavier than nights. The boundary between sleeping and waking may become strangely permeable, as though the work happening in the unconscious field is too significant to be confined to the hours of darkness. The field observers are precise about this stage. The stillness threshold is not breakdown. It is the moment the field is clearing the channel. The suppression did not just seal the golden frequency. It occupied space. It used resources. It filled the field with compensatory structures, beliefs, identities, emotional patterns, behavioral scripts that were built to function in the absence of what was being withheld. Those structures were not inert. They required maintenance. They consumed the energy that would otherwise have moved through the unsealed frequency. When those structures begin to dissolve, the field empties before it refills. The resources that were allocated to maintaining the compensation become temporarily unallocated. The stillness is that moment of unallocated field, cleared of the compensatory architecture, not yet reorganized around the emerging frequency. The silence is the space that the gold is about to move into. It is not absence, it is preparation. The fifth pattern is what the field observers designate as identity erosion, not the destruction of the self, but the dissolution of the constructed self that was assembled during the period of suppression. This is where the process becomes philosophically confronting in a way the other patterns are not, because the question it raises is the most fundamental one available to a conscious being. If this self is dissolving, what remains? The field observers answer this question with precision, and the precision is important. The identity that is eroding is not false in the simple sense. It was built with real effort, real survival intelligence, real adaptive capacity. It served you across the years of the suppression. It gave you a name, a story, a set of recognizable characteristics that allowed you to navigate the world the compression created. It protected you. It got you to this moment. But it was built around what was available during the suppression, around the absence of your full frequency. It was the best architecture that could be constructed while the gold was sealed inside a container too small to express it. Now that the seal is breaking, that architecture is becoming structurally incompatible with what is surfacing. The identity built for the compressed frequency cannot contain the one now expanding. The version of you that learned to move through the world at reduced signal cannot represent the version of you that is beginning to transmit at full power. The erosion is not loss of self. It is the natural consequence of a field exceeding the container built to hold it in place. What erodes was always provisional. What remains is what was always underneath. The sixth pattern is one the field observers call temporal displacement, a disruption in the subjective experience of time and continuity that many people in this phase describe but rarely speak aloud, because it sounds like madness when said plainly in ordinary conversation. Days feel simultaneously too slow and too fast. Hours stretch without content, then collapse without warning. The past feels disproportionately close. Events from years ago suddenly feel present, unresolved, pressing for attention as though they never fully closed. Old memories surface without invitation, carrying an emotional charge that seems disproportionate to the distance. The future feels inaccessible or unreal, as though the timeline that was previously visible has lost definition, gone soft at its edges, refused to hold a shape you can move toward with confidence. There is a sense that the story of your life no longer reads as a coherent sequence, that the through line has broken, that you are in a chapter that does not connect cleanly to the ones before it, as though a page was torn and what remains cannot be assembled back into a single narrative. The field observers identify this as the experiential signature of a timeline rupture, the moment when the field detaches from the trajectory it was on and enters the transitional corridor between the old line and the new one. In the corridor, time behaves differently because the anchors that structured time are the same anchors that organized the suppression. The old trajectory had a logic. It had landmarks. It had a through line built from the identity, the loops, the compensatory architecture, all of which are now dissolving. Without those anchors, the subjective experience of time loses its familiar scaffolding. Continuity feels interrupted because it is. The line has broken, not as a disaster, as a correction. The old trajectory was the trajectory of the suppression. The new one is the trajectory of the frequency being restored. In the corridor between them, temporal displacement is not confusion. It is the field experiencing the gap between what it was locked into and what it is now moving toward, with nothing yet solid enough underfoot to restore the ordinary sense of sequential time. The seventh pattern is perhaps the most important to name because it is the one that most often leads people in this phase to reverse course, to seek to reconstruct the old architecture, to choose the familiar pain over the unfamiliar opening. The field observers call it correction misread as punishment. It is the moment when the accumulation of disruption, the dismatch, the loop interruption, the stillness, the identity erosion, the temporal displacement, becomes so total, so comprehensive, so apparently without resolution, that the mind can only interpret it as evidence of something gone catastrophically wrong. Not a phase, not a process, a verdict. This is not a spiritual weakness. It is a predictable response to a process that has no obvious external validation. The world around you does not see the seal breaking. It does not have instruments for it. The people around you do not have language for what is happening inside your field. What they see is someone who appears to be falling apart. What they reflect back to you is concern, confusion, or a judgment that is itself a form of pressure. The pressure to return to the legible, the manageable, the version of you they could locate and predict. And so you begin to internalize that reflection. You begin to wonder if the process is real, or if you have simply broken in a way that sounds better when given spiritual language. You begin to ask whether this is correction or whether it is collapse with a cosmological overlay invented to make the unbearable feel meaningful. The field observers are unequivocal here. They have mapped this moment across every field that has entered this phase without exception. The question itself, the doubt about whether this is real, is not outside the pattern. It is part of the pattern. It is the moment the suppression makes its final move. Because the suppression does not go quietly, it does not simply dissolve when the seal breaks. It uses every available mechanism to convince you that returning to the old architecture is the only rational choice. It uses the concern of the people around you. It uses the weight of the stillness. It uses the absence of external confirmation. It uses the erosion of the identity that used to tell you who you were and what you were for. The doubt is not evidence that the process is false. It is evidence that the process has reached the stage where the suppression is mounting its last structural defense, the most sophisticated one available to it, which is to make the correction feel indistinguishable from collapse. Here is what the field observers know that you do not yet have full access to. The shift in your field did not begin when you noticed it. It began before the symptoms became readable. The incompatibility between your old architecture and your true frequency was already established before the drift, before the mismatch, before the stillness descended. The process was already authorized and already underway before you opened this transmission. What you experienced as confusion, as sudden inexplicable disruption, as the mysterious withdrawal of a life that seemed stable, none of it originated at the moment it became visible. The field had already moved. The architecture had already begun to fail at levels below the ones available to ordinary perception. The confusion, the erosion, the disruption, these are not the beginning of something. They are the surface finally catching up to a shift that already occurred beneath it. What looks like a present crisis is the visible evidence of a change that happened at the level of the field before it became legible at the level of lived experience. This means something precise, and it means it without qualification. You are not in the middle of a breakdown. You are in the middle of an unveiling. The field is not losing coherence. It is losing the false coherence that was built around the suppression. The coherence that required your frequency to remain reduced in order to function, that required the real signal to stay sealed in order for the surrounding architecture to remain intact. What is dissolving was never the real structure. It was the compensatory structure, the architecture assembled to manage your existence in the absence of your full frequency. That architecture served its purpose across the full duration of the suppression. The field observers do not condemn it, they map it. They recognize its function and its cost. But it cannot follow you where the frequency is now going. It was not designed for the expanded signal. It was designed for the sealed one. And the seal has broken. What you are left with in this phase is not nothing, though it can feel like nothing in the moments when the compensatory architecture has cleared. But the new organization has not yet fully arrived. It is the field in its raw corrective state, cleared of the structures built around the sealed frequency, not yet fully reorganized around the one that is emerging, but already fundamentally and irreversibly different from what it was before the seal gave way. This is the most uncomfortable position in the entire process, and also the most consequential, because the decisions made here, the interpretations chosen here, the direction moved toward or away from here, carry disproportionate weight. The old is already gone in all the ways that matter at the field level, and the new has not yet arrived in all the ways that are visible at the surface. You are in the corridor between the old trajectory and the new one. The corridor is not a home. It was never meant to be. It is a passage. It has a threshold at each end, and the one behind you has already closed. Say this if you can feel it as true. What is changing in me is not random, not as a comfort, not as a mantra, as a diagnostic statement of precision. Because it is exact. What is changing in your field is not random, it is structured. It has a sequence that the field observers have mapped across every instance of this phase they have observed. The disruption does not simply accumulate and then release. It follows a recognizable progression: drift, then mismatch, then loop interruption, then stillness, then identity erosion, then temporal displacement, then the final defense of the suppression attempting to convince you to reverse what cannot be reversed. Each stage prepares the field for the next one. Each threshold crossed makes the subsequent one navigable in a way it could not have been without the preparation of what came before. The sequence has a destination, and the destination is not a reconstructed version of the life the suppression allowed. It is not a better managed version of the compressed existence. It is the life the frequency was always building toward, the architecture that becomes possible only when the seal is gone and the signal can finally move at its true magnitude. You are not watching this because you stumbled into it. You are watching this because your field has already entered the process, already crossed the first threshold of the correction, and already become incompatible with the version of your life that was built inside the suppression. The recognition you feel moving through you as this transmission proceeds is not being manufactured by the words. The transmission is only naming what your field has already confirmed to every disruption, every moment of drift, every instance of mismatch, every night of strange sleep, and every morning that felt heavier than it should. The naming is not the event already happened. This transmission is only the moment you receive the language for what your field has been living without words for. Sometimes for months, sometimes for years. The collapse is not the end. The collapse is the first readable signature of the correction. And the correction has already begun. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian-Wealth-Council. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion. And this is only the beginning.